What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over some wide receivers that I feel are being undervalued. In the last episode, we skipped over the top 15, which we will be featuring in a future video. Don't worry, some people asked about that. Yes, we're going to talk about the high-end talent, but we skipped past the top 15. We talked about some high upside wide receivers in the middle rounds. In this one, I want to go over some of the guys that are basically free in drafts, so going later than the middle rounds, that offer exactly what we're looking for in a late round pick. Some sort of path to upside, so we could actually see them starting for us on a championship team, even if they're risky and have a high chance of busting. I don't really care if my 10th, 11th, 12th round pick ends up busting, because I know that in the early weeks, there are incredible free agent options so that if they bust right away, it's totally fine for us. So we're effectively just ignoring risk and just searching for some players who can be quality fantasy starters, not bench options, starters for us on a championship team. And I do think this list has some really great options on that front. Unfortunately, I just can't go over every single player in these videos. So if you want my updated take on every single player or find some undervalued options on your own, then check out the updated rankings on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I added projections and value ratings earlier this week, the latter of which can help you compare across different positions. And of course, those are obviously going to be constantly updated throughout the summer. I think that the value ratings are a really cool addition, so I'm very excited to see what you guys think. So let's get things started off as usual. The stat of the day, yesterday's stat was which defense allowed the most opponent rushing touchdowns per game last season. The answer is the Detroit Lions. Rob Mill 40 was the first to get that on YouTube. And I Am Sawyer Hebs was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat, among wide receivers with at least 1,000 receiving yards last season, who scored the fewest points per game in full PPR scoring? All right, guys, let's talk about some wide receivers that are undervalued. So first up, we've got my boy, Jakobi Meyers. As you may or may not know, I'm a Patriots fan, so nobody is more frustrated that N'Keal Harry has gotten any sort of snap share than me, right? Harry is just not good, was a truly just horrendous draft pick. Myers, on the other hand, has been incredible. Even in his rookie season in 2019, he was just good whenever they gave him snaps. They just never really let him play significant numbers as a rookie. Then last season, finally gets his chance, and of course, because he's good at football, he delivered. From week 7 on, Myers tied Devonta Adams for 6th in percent of team air yards. He tied Brandon Ayuk and Stephon Diggs for 2nd in target share. He finished 3rd in weighted opportunity rating. Unfortunately, he only ranked 24th in fantasy points during that stretch. The thing is, it wasn't entirely Myers' fault, right? Like, he was playing great. I just went over those numbers. Those are exceptional shares of your team's work, just exceptional opportunity ratings. He was good. If you watch those games, he was awesome. But his issue was the offense. I mean, the Patriots ranked 2nd behind only Baltimore in rush play percentage. And this next stat is not a joke. They threw 4 total touchdowns to wide receivers all of last season. Harry had 2, Gunnar Olszewski had 1, and then Damiere Byrd had 1. That's it. Newton ran in 12, the other running backs added 8, but 4 total passing touchdowns to wide receivers over an entire season. And that's awful, right? So, that's kind of where the risk does come in again. We're going to go over plenty in this video why we don't care about risk. But that's where the one bit of risk comes in, is that it is possible that Mac Jones only plays a few games, doesn't even play this season. I mean, that's a possibility. I kind of think the most likely outcome is that Cam Newton starts the season, and then at some point, I mean, he wasn't that great last season. He's probably not going to be like exceptional this season. At some point, they're going to make that transition into Mac Jones. But maybe it's like midway through the season. But it's possible that Mac Jones only plays a few games for us in fantasy. It's possible that Aguilar takes a larger share than Harry did last season, because I don't think Harry's going to take a big share this season. that would lead to a lot less volume and the passing offense still being pretty trash throughout most of the season. But remember, like I alluded to, we don't care about risk. Meyers is definitely the best wide receiver on this roster. He can play on the inside, he can play on the outside, and you have to think that they at least want Mac Jones at some point to be the quarterback, right? Like they didn't draft him to sit on the bench for a while. Like Cam Newton is not the quarterback of the future for the New England Patriots. So even if Newton's announced a starter for week 1, you gotta think they want to be getting Mac Jones game reps because that's how you play better. You learn by doing things. So he's not going to become this exceptional quarterback by sitting on the bench behind Cam Newton. Also, a point. If they think Mac Jones is the future, right? You're building your playbook. They're so different. Like Cam Newton, plays that you would make to feature him are completely different from plays you would make for Mac Jones. And they're not sitting there making 2 playbooks, right? So for them to spend the whole offseason designing a playbook around Cam Newton would feel so strange to me because they know he's not the quarterback of the future for them. At least design the playbook to benefit Mac Jones, even if you're going to start Cam Newton. And if that's the case, well, Newton's probably not going to play that well under a playbook designed for a pocket passer who's not mobile. And so if he doesn't play that well, we might see Mac Jones earlier. So those are my overall thoughts on the Patriots offense. It's why I'm bullish on Jakobi Meyers, and he's going off the board as the wide receiver 115 according to Underdog ADP. If you're drafting on like a major platform, Yahoo, NFL, ESPN, he's free. Whatever the last round of your draft is, that's where you can get him. And again, from week 7 on last season, ties Devonta Adams for 6th in percent of team air yards, ties Brandon Ayuk, Stephon Diggs for 2nd in team target share, 3rd in weighted opportunity rating. You know, he was a low-end wide receiver 2 despite not scoring a single touchdown, right? Like if that doesn't scream value as the wide receiver 115, then I just don't know what does. Exceptional pick in the final round of your draft. Another guy I'd be going after is Russell Gage. He'll be entering his 4th season and is coming off 72 receptions for 786 yards and 4 touchdowns. But it was honestly a little bit better than that. You know, if we only count the games where he got a snap share, so 65% of the snaps or more. He averaged 4.5 receptions, about 60 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns across those 10 games. Now, that's not like elite production, but it's effectively what like Tyler Boyd, Cooper Kupp did last season. And it wasn't just because, Julio was out of all those games. It was literally 50-50. 5 games Julio played, 5 games he didn't. He's just a good wide receiver, and the fact that he commanded more targets than Mike Evans and Adam Thielen should probably tell you something, right? Like he's a quality wide receiver, and then he's somehow going as the 61st wide receiver off the board, even with the potential for Julio to be traded, which as of recording this seems more likely to happen than not. Like, we should just be assuming he'll be traded when we're drafting right now. Gage, like I said, is a pretty good wide receiver on a high volume offense, one of the highest volumes we'll probably see this season, and is on a team that might be losing one of the biggest target hogs in all of football. Like, that is an incredible value that honestly doesn't even have that big of a chance of busting. Worst case scenario, he's probably still going to be out there on most plays, and he's probably not going to be that bad. So if Julio stays, it doesn't even matter. Like, he's still a value. If Julio leaves, then it's ridiculous what his ADP is right now. Final wide receiver we'll go over today is Parris Campbell. I don't think that I've really mentioned him at all yet this season, but I haven't done that many like late round videos, so I guess that's probably why. But Campbell is a pretty big late round target for me because he's just going way too late as a wide receiver, 67 off the board. I'm going to announce it here so that we're all on the same page. T.Y. Hilton is dust, right? Like, he ranked in the 3rd percentile in success rate versus man last season, 11th percentile in success rate versus the press. That is the opposite end of where you want to be. 95th percentile means you're really, really good. 3rd percentile means you are one of the worst receivers in all of football in just getting open, right? Like, he just couldn't get open last season, and it wasn't exactly because he was getting doubled, right? He's been just an incredible deep threat for years now, but he fell off a cliff last season. And while he wasn't fully healthy, let's be honest. I mean, he's turning 32 this year. He's been injured for the past few seasons. Like, it's just incredibly unlikely that he will be able to command a large snap share this season. I do think he'll be used, but it'll be more as like a situational deep threat, not as an every down starter. That way they can keep him more healthy, but also have guys in the field that can create some sort of consistent separation, because he can get loose deep if they design specific plays for him and give him a small snapshot so he's always fresh. But consistently getting open, that is not something T.Y. Hilton can do at this point in his career. Had a great career, but at this point, it's just not something he's capable of. Now, I do think that Pittman will be their number one. He's built like a number one receiver. He proved last season, especially to close the season, he's capable of filling that role. I think he's the one. But Parris Campbell should be the number two. And remember, he was a second-round pick in 2019, 97th percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst score, 100th percentile breakout age. He's a really good receiver. It's just, unfortunately, he's had a brutal start to his career. Had the ab strain, the hand fracture, I believe hamstring injuries as well, just super hurt over his rookie season. Even in the games he played, I mean, he missed like half the year due to injury. Even in the games he played, he was a little bit hobbled. Then he sprains both his MCL, his PCL in week 2 last year, missed the rest of the season. But that one I'm definitely not concerned about, because, I mean, there were still talks that like maybe he can return kind of at the later portion of the season. He ultimately didn't. He was still a little bit too injured. But the fact that that was even a question, he's had plenty of time to recover. He's going to be 100% unless he suffers some other unknown injuries. But he's going to have more than enough time to be 100% to start this season. And we were very excited about him after week 1 last year. He caught 6 of 9 targets for 71 yards. He was given a carry. He got a carry right from the start in week 2. Like, he was clearly going to be a big part of this offense last season. And that's going to be the same this coming year if he can stay healthy. And since we don't care about risk at this point in the draft, he's an incredible late round value. I want to leave you guys with a story. So I've mentioned so far throughout this video, throughout so many videos, is that we don't care about risk in the later portion of the draft. But I feel like that maybe doesn't get across to everyone, because people look at players and be like, I know, but the path is sort of thin, and like I just don't want to waste one of my late round picks. Not like we have all that many late round picks. I don't want to waste one of them on this player. Eno Benjamin last season was on an above average percent of championship teams. And this was in best ball as well. So it's not like he was just cut everywhere and everyone added James Robinson or something like that. Like, he was on an above average percent of championship teams in best ball, where you cannot drop anyone. You cannot add players. And this is very noteworthy because he did not record a single touch. So to be on an above average amount of championship teams while scoring 0 fantasy points, like how is that even possible? Is that just like randomness? No, it's because of correlation. There must be something that all Eno Benjamin teams did in common that resulted them winning on such a high percent of leagues. And I believe that thing that they were all doing, or at least a higher percent of those teams were doing, is solid roster construction. The people who took Benjamin clearly did not care about the floor in later rounds of their draft. Again, he did not touch the ball all season and wasn't really expected to. It wasn't like, oh, he's clearly the backup, everyone load up on this guy. Like, Edmonds and Drake were very clearly the 2 lead backs. So Benjamin being like the 7th round rookie, I mean, obviously he needed an injury to get any sort of work. But that's the point. The people who drafted him did not care about that. They knew that if those injuries were to happen, his path to touches is clear. On a very, very good offense, he was going to be great in fantasy if they had a bunch of injuries. They knew they'd have this massive, massive edge if things worked out in their way. And since we know that they thought like that with that pick, we know that they also likely thought that way for their other late round picks. And that means they were much more likely to hit on league winners at a much higher rate. So even though they took a 0 with Eno Benjamin, well, they probably took chances on guys like James Robinson, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Curtis Samuel, Mike Davis, guys that won leagues in the later rounds last season, but didn't necessarily have a big role. I mean, what was Mike Davis's role to start last season? There was no clarity on the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers. Brandon Ayuk was part of like a low volume passing offense, a rookie. There were clearly guys ahead of him. T. Higgins was a similar situation, but he had a rookie quarterback. He was clearly behind other guys. Curtis Samuel just had been dudding every single season. Like, no one wanted, I mean, we love T. Higgins. He was one of our favorite late round picks. But no one was going out of their way to say that all of those guys were just 100% locks, right? Like, we knew they had a very low floor. But since you don't care about the floor, you can draft guys who have a path to being exceptional in fantasy. So if you like someone on this list or another player that I haven't even mentioned yet this season, don't let someone talk you off of it because the risk is high or the odds are really low. If you see a path, now this is important, you still have to see a path for them to be high-end fantasy producers. But if you see that path and you believe that they will produce if they're given the opportunity, go for it. Because I would much rather just go down swinging than lose because I tried to like single my way to a championship. And if you want help along the way, you don't think you can do it all on your own, then our draft package will absolutely do that for you. It has tiered rankings, sleepers, busts, projections, values, and a whole lot more. So be sure to check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.